what do we think? I'll just ask you big, broad questions. I'm not a lawyer. You have a law degree. I'm going to kind of play off of you because there's gravitas to what you say on this, not me. I'm curious, is this, you don't call this meeting on the Friday before Christmas, Gene, unless you've got something big, something of substance to either talk about or certainly get out there in the media world. What do you speculate, if you want to, that this is about?
Yeah, and you're right about the timing. To me is very interesting because when I got, like you, wind of this weeks ago that something was coming down, I heard at the next Board of Trustees meeting, which was not scheduled now. This is a special meeting. That was, I think it's in January at some
Yep.
point. So they were inspired enough to put a special meeting on the eve of Christmas Eve, basically, to have this, which means there's something is brewing, something significant. And the fact that Andrea Adelson from ESPN wrote something the other day about this, she would not have brought that up, unless something was going on. It was specifically because of what happened with the snub of the committee is expedited. That I think what FSU is going to do, which it probably would have had this meeting in January, but I think it expedited. I'm guessing there'll be a little bit more vitriol probably involved because of what happened, and you've got more damages to show now than maybe you had before. But to your bigger question, Jeff, of what I think is going to happen here, I think a few things could happen. I think the biggest thing, we're going to see that lawsuit that we've all kind of speculated about. I don't think it'll necessarily say it's been filed, but I think there will be discussion of we are planning to file a lawsuit against ACC and or ESPN, Disney, however that's all going to play out in this thing. And again, this is not only because of the lawsuit, and it goes to a bigger picture, and people go, well, can you win a lawsuit in the court? Oh, it's going to play out. Look, there's layers beyond this. You're not just filing a lawsuit to pound ACC and ESPN to the ground. You're filing a lawsuit to get leverage when you're going to go. This is 99% of these kind of cases get negotiated at some point. It's going to be negotiated. I doubt you're going to see this case on court TV. We're going to be seeing, ESPN and people from representatives from Disney and the ACC commissioner all up there on the witness stand. I don't think that's ever going to happen. So I think they're going to lay out plans for a lawsuit, the basis for that lawsuit. And I hope they also get, Jeff, into some damages. It would be because, you have to show damages in these things. And I think, especially like you said, millions of dollars were costed by this. And this is you can go to a lot of other things in terms of what ESPN and what the ACC have done to really limit Florida State and what they can do, the distribution model. Obviously, ESPN recently did they invested another $3 billion to get the rest of the inventory from the SEC. You can obviously show a lot of ways they are pushing the SEC over the ACC and in turn costing FSU money. Why that's relevant is because FSU has a contract, or ACC has a contract with ESPN. You have to act in the best interest of your partner in contractual situations. I think FSU can show they have not been doing that, and that has been hurting FSU financially in the process. Now, one other thing is to give a legal opinion. This is tough on a lot of things. First, I haven't practiced forever, but that's neither here nor there. The fact that the main contract involved in this whole thing is not the grant of rights that we've gotten glimpses of. It is the contract between the ACC and ESPN, and that is locked behind closed doors in Charlotte and in Bristol. But Florida State's attorneys, probably for the last year or so, have been up there. They can't take pictures. They can't do anything about it. They can't get copies of it, but they can go there and they can take notes. And they've been going through that thing like crazy. So I hope the curtain will be unveiled a bit, maybe tomorrow, and we'll get to hear some of the details of what is in that contract and what can be done legally to throw that out or to mitigate it. And the legal basis, we're going to find out maybe the legal basis behind Florida State's plans to somehow get that albatross off their back.
A lot of meat on the bone there, Gene. So I want to circle back to something you just said at the outset. A lot of times, most of the time, as you noted, these things get negotiated. They never find the inside of a courtroom. They don't go to court. There's a lot to lose if everybody goes to court, and it gets drawn out, and it can take years and years, right? The other reason a lot of times, as I understand it, that these things get negotiated in some way or they never see the inside of a courtroom is when you file a lawsuit. A couple things here I want to ask you about. If I'm mistaken, please tell me. If they file a lawsuit, let's say that's what they're going to do. We don't know that. Let's say that's what they're going to do, or they intend to. Once you do that, there's a process called discovery, right? And nobody likes discovery because that is texts, that is emails, that is everything that's ever been recorded in regards to these contracts, these negotiations, all of it. And a lot of times we've seen this play out on the big stage. When the NFL got sued with the concussion stuff, we saw some really unsavory emails. And then later on, when owners are suing the league and the league is suing the owners, you catch those emails and it can reveal a lot about a person, about a company, about the way the group does business, all of it. Nobody wants that stuff out in the public. There's a lot that, nobody's made to look good typically. So once that happens, it seems to me that it expedites the need for them to say, okay, look, none of us want this. Let's talk about a number. Am I right? That's a big picture, broad-based. I'm not a lawyer, but that to me seems like why you would do it. The other part of that is, wouldn't it stay in the state of Florida if it's filed in the state of Florida? And if you're ESPN and or anybody else that's named in this lawsuit, wouldn't you be worried at some point that if the case is tried in the state of Florida, that, I don't know, maybe Judge Charlie Seminole presides over the case? Like, you don't want that either, right?
Right. And let's also, not to get into politics, we obviously know the governor's not the biggest fan of Mickey down in Orlando either, who ultimately is the head honcho of this whole thing. So they would not. And again, I don't know that, looking at all the contracts, again, I don't know the venue, but I assume they're going to try to make venue in the state of Florida. I would say if Florida State's filing, I would assume if it's possible, to get them in the state 100%, Jeff. Yeah, and you're right. That is the thing with the lawsuit. A lot of uncomfortable things happen. And that's, again, it goes into the leverage of having the discovery. And also, everybody's open for depositions too. That means you are under oath doing these things. And some people are very uncomfortable with those things because you are under oath. There can be some stuff you've done. And if ESPN and ACC have colluded to do some things or whatever, even they go, well, maybe they can't find the paper trail, but I got to go with a penalty of potential perjury and go and lie, the court reporter there and all these other things, that it's scary. And they say, you know what, let's settle this case. I don't want to be up on that. I don't want to put myself in that position. So you are 100% right. It's very uncomfortable. Here's what I would do and what we've done in what I would say I would do if the attorney's in this situation. Florida State hypothetically announces a lawsuit tomorrow. They spell out some of the terms, they lay out the damages to show there's a lot of money that we are losing because of this. And this gives us, reason to mitigate this whole thing. What I do, if I have a good enough, strong enough case, I'm drafting that paperwork. I'm getting it all. I'm getting the complaint. I'm getting, if there's supporting memoranda, whatever, I'm putting that all in. I'm sending a draft to the interested parties. Here is what's going to be filed. Like you said, it's not going to be filed because of the whole can of worms they want to avoid goes. I send them a draft and go, here's what's about to land on your doorstep, and go, and you're going to suddenly then we're going to follow up. But you could even lay out your discovery plan and go, here's what's going to happen to you. And then at that point, go, you have 30 days, or we can get to the negotiation table. Let's discuss this. And that's again, you have the leverage at that point. They know it's coming. And you put the fear of God in them and get them to the table. And that's when the grant of rights isn't going away. The exit fee is never going away. But what you can do is negotiate that thing down to a palatable level where you're not bankrupting the school or tapping out all the money, the money that's going to the boosters or the NIL. You don't want to sell your boots. Stop giving all the money to that. We need hundreds of millions of dollars to get out of this godforsaken conference. So that's how I would handle it. Now, that's hypothetical. Who knows what they have in mind?
It's fantastic, though. It's a lot of fun to talk about because we've known this is coming somehow, some way. Around every turn, Florida State feels they've been wronged, this just being the latest. And you know that wild conspiracy theorists that are out there would speculate, well, maybe that's why Boo and that's why the commissioner were nowhere to be found. This was an amazing precedent to set, to not have a Power 5 conference champion undefeated go and make the playoff. And man, there wasn't a voice until the last second that pushed back on that narrative from the ACC. And there were 5 ACC people in that room. And what are we doing? And, if you're Florida State, at this point, you're like, well, we get screwed around every turn. We're losing out on millions of dollars. I'm not sure how involved they were or were not involved in this latest fiasco, but I do know it cost us millions of dollars. What do we have to lose? We've got to find a way to get to the negotiating table somehow, some way. Maybe this expedites that process. Maybe, just maybe, and then you tie it in with the private equity firm stuff that we've all read about numerous times, right? You can start to paint this picture.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we all thought this, Jeff, but I think the board of trustees laid this out last spring and summer where they said, look, it's not a function of we can weather the storm. We have to get out of the frickin' storm. There's no way you can survive this thing financially in the long term. You can't, sooner rather than later. And I think this is what has happened here over the last couple months, especially the last couple weeks. I think, like you said, it's expedited this whole thing. It's now you can. There are more damages to show, and it's doing more damages to the school. At some point, we can speculate. I don't know. Signing day happened yesterday, and I don't think what happened with the playoff committee helped FSU, certainly. And an argument could maybe it cost you a guy or two that you were trending to have at some point. We're talking about a top 2-3 class, and you ended up with a tennis class. I mean, you could make the argument too that you are here. This is continuing to have damages as a result. I don't think it was made in the exact framework. Some people read it in these so-called Power Five conference that came back in that statement.
Yeah.
But I think it was poorly written. I don't think they meant that necessarily. But I mean, it sure looks like ESPN and everybody else is treating the ACC as a so-called a group. It's now a group of what? Group of 8?
Yeah.
Really? You've got the power too. So you're doing that to a contractual partner of yourself. You're degrading their value, and it's continuing to show impact. I'd make the argument it hurt the recruiting class. You certainly could make that argument. Again, that goes to your bottom line. You're destroying the athletic programs here at Florida State. So yeah, like you said, this is a lot of fun because it's going to be, and Florida State is going to be on the offensive, and we haven't seen this before. We've seen some words, and it was great when the board of trustees came out to actually take real action. I wonder deep down if ESPN or ACC really ever thought Florida State would take it this far. Do you think they knew this was coming, Jeff?
I mean, how could you not? At some point, when you call a board of trustees meeting that you know is being recorded and that the public has access to, and certainly the press, and you call out the situation in the manner that they did, with the words that they did, and I think you had the president, you had the chair, you had everybody saying this is unacceptable, untenable, and there is no future for us here. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they thought would happen next, but surely after this latest fiasco, they had to think, this might do it. I mean, this might do it. We have really bent them over every which way to Sunday, and they're probably about tired of it now. Florida State, like you said, at the end of the day, the average fan driving down the road listening to us or watching on Warchant TV is saying, okay, great, guys. It is fun to speculate. This is the stuff of courtroom drama and TV shows and movies and all that. But the bottom line is, can you please tell me when we're getting out of here and how much is it going to cost us? That's what we all want to know. And I think we're moving another step closer towards that end. I think that at the end of the day, there will be a lot of information that comes out of this. Ira and Corey and everybody else at Warchant will do our best to cover this thing and get to the root of it. I know we've got great sources and we'll have all the latest. But at the same time, I think the average guy is just like, okay, cool. I don't want to get bogged down. I just want to know, when can we get out? It's not next year. Obviously, they're going to play the 2024 schedule.
Yeah, you have to. But here's the thing, too. I don't know if they announce it here. They could put in their official notice as well. But again, they have until August to do that. So assuming they put in official notice that we plan to leave the conference, they would play in 2024. But in 2025, FSU would be somewhere else. So it can it'd be great if that would happen Friday as well. You're going to do it. I can't imagine they would go beyond August and run this thing through 2025. I just can't, especially if they're filing a lawsuit. I think that ship has sailed at this point. But yeah, going back to your other point, Jeff, I think it's unprecedented what Florida State's doing. That's why I kind of wonder deep down if some people really thought Florida State was going to, they bluffed. There's a lot of bluster and they're saying a lot of things, but they talked about throwing them a bone. We'll give you a little bit of your postseason money, maybe that kind of stuff. Like they could placate him with a couple scraps. But this is, I think, what's happened now. I mean, Florida State, they push Florida State. They're stepping over that line that's never been stepped over before, and we're going to see that tomorrow.
Before I let you go, I got to ask you this because everybody wants to know this. You get this text or email. I get it. We see it on the boards at warchant.com. Around any turn, if I go pick up to-go food from a restaurant, the guy comes over to me and says, hey, listen, all I really want to know, Big Ten, SEC. All right, so we don't know. But why do you think in the last 72 hours have we heard so many? You referenced Andrea Adelson's report, right? She didn't accidentally write that story out of nowhere. It's a revived story from a month ago. So why are we hearing that now? Is that just because some people got wind that this potential Board of Trustees meeting was going to happen, potential lawsuit was going to happen, or at least an announcement of. Did that spur on the speculation about Big Ten? Because I keep hearing Big Ten. Of course, everybody has their opinion about where they think Florida State should go and where the best fit is. I guess speculate with the rest of us here. Do you have a sense of that? Because I know you have great sources too. You've been in this industry a long, long time, Gene. We talk to guys that are high on the ladder there. Do you get a sense of this?
A few weeks ago, before the infamous snub, I was 90%. I'd like them to go to the SEC. I was 90% sure, but it depends how contentious this thing is, Jeff. I don't know how many lawsuits you've been involved, but if you're filing suit and ESPN is named a member, you might be poisoning that well too much. Where maybe you're not. That's not your destination, and we don't know. We're not going to know. The one thing that's not going to happen tomorrow is you're not going to hear discussions. We've begun negotiations with the Big Ten. You're not going to hear that. They can't do that at this point. But that doesn't mean they're not happening. And what I don't know is if those are going on. Maybe that's where FSU's in a good position now. The playoff committee snub. They've had discussions with the Big Ten. We get out. We negotiate this. What's the game plan? What are our shares? Are you guys going to contribute? A lot of things behind the scenes we don't know. So maybe that's part of it. So my speculation is I thought almost for sure SEC up until the snub, and I'm kind of leaning to the Big Ten now. I just think you too much. There's been too much dirty laundry, too much stuff going on with the SEC and ESPN right now. I think they want to wash their hands of that group because they've done FSU wrong, and now FSU is going to fire back at them. That's weird to get back into bed with them at this point. So I think it's a big screw you to ESPN and to the SEC by giving Fox that place, this spot in the SEC stranglehold right here in the Southeast, and especially if you bring a Clemson with it, bring a North Carolina maybe with you. Suddenly, you got a national conference that's coast to coast in the Big Ten, where the SEC is still kind of regional. I think, and eventually we know probably at that point maybe Notre Dame jumps in too. And then who's got the bigger conference at that point?
Well, goodness gracious, you'd have USC, Washington, Oregon, all the way down to Tallahassee, Florida, and in between Michigan and Ohio State. Forget about it. You've got
Penn
like
State,
you said,
Notre Dame, all them. Woo.
It's a fun thing to think about. I think we're moving inexorably towards just the two gigantic conferences.
Yes. It's AFC, NFC. We're going to the eventually. I think players get revenue sharing, collective bargaining, employees. It's all headed that way, and you're going to have AFC, NFC as Big Ten and SEC. And all that fun stuff. But then hopefully maybe you get some salary caps and maybe you can prevent the Alabamas and the Georgias from spending ridiculous amount of money on coaches and NIL and everything else.
Yeah, you get a level playing field. Gene, I always appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for hopping on. And, of course, we'll stay on this. We want to invite everybody to understand that anything that happens over there, Board of Trustees meeting, an announcement, anything, we're going to be on it, of course. And, in fact, our guys, as we speak, they were practiced today. So you're going to have reports from Ira and Corey and Aslan, everybody over there. So don't forget, tune in, sign up, warchant.com. A lot going on right now. We still have the portal active on the heels of National Signing Day. Plenty of reports as well. Gene Williams, founder, administrator.
And then, Jeff, I think we're going to try to be live tomorrow, aren't we? I think we are going to try to go live during the Board of Trustees meeting. So you can come right here on Warchant TV. We'll have our staff interact with, we'll take your questions. We'll tell you what's going on with the committee. So that's going to be a lot of fun to get the instant reaction to what's going on.
Perfect. So you don't want to miss it. That's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Gene, be well, sir. Thank you.